Welcome back to Old School Sports and our OOTP 23 playthrough of the Kansas City Royals. We've concluded another successful regular season, ended up 102-60, won the AL Central easily, and ended up with the best record in baseball again. So we are as well positioned as we could hope to be as we pursue a potential fourth consecutive World Series championship. If the Royals win that World Series championship, we'll be back next season to try for 5 in a row. If we are eliminated in the playoffs, this could be the end of this playthrough. Appreciate everyone who's given us some thoughts on what we should do next if we do move on from the Royals. I've still got some ideas in my head. I think all the input that people have provided in comments has been pretty helpful for me to try to think things through. Definitely given me some interesting ideas to either think about for the next playthrough or something down the line. So appreciate everyone who's taken the time to share their thoughts with me. And we're going to find out over the next, 40, 45 minutes or so whether this Royals playthrough is nearing its end or whether we'll go in a drive for 5 next season. We've done some preliminary work on figuring out what our playoff roster could look like. The key thing that we did, you may remember, we typically move down to 12 pitchers and move up to 14 position players when we're in the playoffs. So we actually took Christian Hernandez off of the roster. He was the guy we picked up from Philadelphia in a trade right before the trade deadline as kind of starting pitching depth. He wasn't great with us, 5.13 ERA over 52 and 2/3 innings. He's kind of an insurance policy. It seems weird to have a guy making almost $9 million a year not be on your playoff roster. But we've decided when thinking about the pitching, we're going to go with the guys who were with us all year as our 4-man rotation. Bryce Hillman, Eddie Chavera, Caleb Lagerwell, and Marco Estrada all won double-digit games this year. All had ERAs in the 3s, all pitched 184-plus innings. And although Estrada was not a regular member of the rotation until we decided to move on from Ben Borgman after he had 5 or 6 starts, something around that amount, still a pretty important player for us. So those are the 4 guys we're going to go with. You can see the potential bullpen. Only 2 lefties, Gabe Pryor and Omar Ganoa. We also had to move Chris Rutledge off of the roster. He should be healthy from that pulled ab muscle 2 days, so he'll be ready for the playoffs if we wanted him. He's a guy who split this season between Omaha and KC, was reasonably effective in both. He just kind of got caught in a numbers game. If you look at the performance of the guys in the bullpen this year for us, all really solid. Ganoa, kind of the most suspect. That 4.11 ERA sounds pretty sickly, but he only pitched 35 innings for us as a lefty specialist, and over the second half of the season, he was a lot more effective than he was over the first half of the season. So the potential playoff roster, since we are going to be down a pitcher, allows us to add a position player. And the guy that we'd like to add is Willie Flores, who has been banged up for the past 3+ weeks at this point with a strained hammy. Recovery time still unknown, although it's a day-to-day injury. Hopefully he'll heal up over the next 3 or 4 days while the wild card series are going on. But if he is healthy, he's the guy that we're kind of adding as our 14th player on the roster. If he's not healthy, then we got some interesting choices because Laziosi is still hurt. And this is, some of you I'm sure are yelling at me about this right now, but this is one of the problems. We don't typically manage our 40-man roster real aggressively. You can see we've only got 35 guys on it right now, and it looks like it would have been wise for us back in August or so to add a couple additional players to the 40-man just to have them potentially eligible for the playoffs. Because we don't have a ton of different options among everyday players. We could bring Leo Aguiar, our longtime backup catcher, back up. David Powell, who was a pretty effective hitter in AAA this year, could have him back in the majors. And then Luis Linares is actually a guy who is on the 40-man but only played in AAA this year. Still a potentially interesting player for us in the infield down the line. Don't think he's quite ready yet, but at least we've got options. But in a perfect world, Flores will be healthy, and we won't have any hard decisions to make, and hopefully we won't face too many injuries as the playoffs move on. But that is kind of what we are thinking right now, but we will kind of move on to the playoffs and see what those wild card matchups look like, and hopefully see if Kyle Smith and Willie Flores can get completely healthy from those lingering day-to-day injuries over the next several days. And looking at the playoff tree in the American League, our Royals and the Red Sox have the byes. We'll be facing the Blue Jays or the Twins in the division series. The Red Sox will be going up against the White Sox or the Mariners. Over in the National League, the Diamondbacks and the Mets, who we were kind of in a battle with over the last couple months of the season for the best record in baseball, have the home field advantages. Dodgers and Padres in a matchup of National League West teams in one wild card series. And the Braves and the Reds will be facing each other in the other wild card series. And we've made it to the start of our series against the Blue Jays, who ended up upending the Twins, if I could show you the playoff tree. And the good news for our Royals is Kyle Smith had healed up from his injury in line with the expected timeline of a couple of days. And as of today, Willie Flores is no longer banged up, literally as of today. So we've got him back. So we're kind of playing with the team that we want to play with. Obviously, in a perfect world, we'd love to have Ergetto Laziosi playing second base. But we've got the youngster Bobby Cintrone, who probably has a better bat than Laziosi. Not as good defensively. So definitely could see ourselves in a situation where Billy Dominguez or a Dave Urquiza comes in as a defensive substitute late in a game and shifts things around a little bit for us. You know, maybe Flores moves to second base and a Dominguez or Urquiza takes over at third to strengthen our defense. But we will have Bobby Cintrone's bat, which will be good. You know, looking at the team in the injured list, Munoz, Rocker, and Borgman have all been gone for a very long time at this point, and all still have long rehabilitation ahead of them. Laziosi, when he tore that hamstring back at the beginning of September, we were hopeful maybe we would potentially have him for a round or two in the playoffs. With 4 weeks of injury time left, seems pretty unlikely that we'll see him again this season, even if we are fortunate enough to make it to the World Series. But with Cintrone up to potentially replace him, as I talked about, we probably are better offensively, even though we may not be quite as good defensively. And as we get ready to kick off, or I guess actually pitch off this best of 5 division series against the Blue Jays, take a look at both teams. You can see the Blue Jays 85 and 77, second in the AL East. We did take the season series against them 4-3. And our Royals, second in the league in runs scored, first in runs against. The Blue Jays, a really good pitching staff. They were second in runs against, but tied for 10th in runs scored. So the hope would be that our excellent pitching staff and their somewhat mediocre offense means we're not going to need to score too many runs to win. But since we'll be going up against the second best pitching staff in the American League with our second best offense, going to be a good test for their pitchers against our batters. Game 1, Bryce Hillman on the mound for us, 14-10, 3.72 ERA. And we're going to be going up against Ozzy Romero, a 31-year-old, very durable. Went 9-10 this year with a 3.82 ERA over 167 and a third innings pitched for the Blue Jays. Profile certainly looks like he's a hittable pitcher. We look at the numbers for his career, and he's kind of been a average-ish, a little below average major league starter in some of his numbers, although he has put up over 12 WAR over the course of his career. So have to think that this matchup favors us in Game 1, but we'll see what happens. And a 1-0 victory. Wow. Pitcher's duel between Hillman and Romero. The lone run from Victor Avelar, who we've been talking about, could be a player that we move on from after this season, but he had the big hit today. Santiago Suarez gets the save in relief. Only 4 hits for the Royals, and that home run by Avelar was in the second inning, and then it was all pitchers after that. 3 hits over 7 innings from Hillman. Burnett and Suarez came on to pitch pretty clean relief. 3 strikeouts in that 1 inning of pitching from Burnett. Romero, hard luck loser, only 3 hits and 3 walks, 1 earned run over 6 2/3. Bryce Hillman gets the player of the game, and the ALDS is off to a good start for our Kansas City Royals as we prepare to hopefully take a 2-0 lead in Game 2. You can see that we are going to have Eddie Chivera on the mound. Like Bryce Hillman, he's a player who we traded for a few seasons ago. All Chivera has done with us is be with the Royals for 3 seasons, and we've won a World Series every season that he's been with us. Taking a look at those pitching staffs, a 14-5 record this year with a 3.25 ERA, 190 strikeouts over 205 innings, and a 5.2 WAR. So the best year of his Royals career and the best year of his career in general, even though the 14 wins weren't as many as he's won in some other games. So looking forward to seeing what Chivera can do in the Game 2 start. He will be going up against Alex Rojas, who is one of the top pitchers in baseball. He's a guy that we have, from time to time, dreamed about trading for, but rightly so. The Blue Jays have demanded the world for him. 12-9 record for the 28-year-old, 3.55 ERA, 218 strikeouts over 198 innings pitched. You can see over the course of his career, 61-52 with a 3.90 ERA, 1.10 ERA plus, 88 FIP minus, and he's put up a WAR of almost 20. He did win that Cy Young Award back in 2035 when he put up a 6.3 WAR, 16-8 record, 2.58 ERA. So a tough matchup for the Royals today against one of the best pitchers in the American League. And Toronto gets by us 2-1. A couple of pitching duels so far. They got revenge on us in Game 2 as Rojas outpitches Chivera. Got a home run from Javi Medina. They got a home run from Alex Fajardo. Taking a look at the box score, they jumped on us. We came back, and then in the 8th inning, they finally got to Chivera. We let him go out for the start of the 8th. He only got 1 out in the inning, and he gave up that run. So Chivera was strong. 3 hits, 8 strikeouts, over 7 1/3, only 2 earned runs. Burnett and Pryor on in relief, but Rojas was better. 1 run over 7 innings, and then 2 innings from Hugo Macias to pick up the save. So 1-1 in the games in Kansas City. And we are now headed to Toronto, where, of course, if you've been watching this series, anytime there's a pivotal game in a series, there's one man who always seems to be on the mound for the Kansas City Royals. And more often than not, over the course of his playoff career, that's meant good things for the Royals. Caleb Lagerwell, of course, is who I'm talking about. 13-6 record this year, 3.22 ERA, third best in the American League. Has had a really nice career with the Royals. You can see 157 and 104 record with a 3.60 ERA over the course of his major league career. He's not what he used to be, but he's still pretty effective. And I mentioned his playoff success. At this point, he carries a 14-4 postseason record with a 3.60 ERA. In a very impressive playoff resume from Lagerwell. You can see over the last 3 years when we've won the 3 straight World Series, he's been 10-0 in the playoffs, and he's also been the winning pitcher in Game 7 of the World Series twice. So even though he may not be what he used to be as far as his ratings, certainly a guy we feel pretty confident to have on the mound. He's going to be going up against Edgar Mendizabal, 27-year-old, 8-11 with a respectable, actually a more than respectable 3.67 ERA for the Blue Jays this year. You can see with a 3.2 WAR and a 3.02 SIERA. Even better than the ancillary numbers that Lagerwell put up this year. So although we're confident with Lagerwell on the mound, certainly facing a good pitcher in Mendizabal in this pivotal Game 3. And a 5-4 loss for the Royals. So we are on the brink of being eliminated down 2-1 to these Blue Jays. Take a look at the box score. You can see we got homers from Vasquez and Ojeda. Our closer, Santiago Suarez, with a loss. So that is a crazy finish. They got up on us in the first inning. We tied them back in the second. We took a lead in the seventh. They came back to take a 1-run lead, which they carried into the top of the ninth. We scored 2 runs to take the lead. And then they got 2 on us in the bottom of the ninth. Run-scoring single from Nick Jackson in the bottom of the ninth to push the Royals to push the Blue Jays to victory. You can see how volatile the percentages were over those last few innings with the scores flip-flopping. Lagerwell, quality start, 5 hits, 2 walks, 3 earned runs over 7 innings with 9 strikeouts. Bernay once again on in relief, and Santiago Suarez, ugly relief appearance for us, blown save and a loss, 3 hits and a walk, gave up the 2 earned runs, got just 1 out. So definitely some disappointment there for the Royals. Have not had our backs against the wall in a playoff series for a long time, but it will be tomorrow in Toronto. And we will have a pitcher who is making his first playoff start in his career in Marco Estrada. But before we talk about Estrada, let's meet who we're going up against. Leonardo Morales, 8-11 record with a 3.98 ERA. Really nice fastball and nice changeup, but that curve is not exceptional. Definitely would think he's a pitcher that hopefully we can score some runs off of. Marco Estrada, as I mentioned, the youngster, 25 years old, we'll talk about his postseason shortly, but has been up for the last 2 years with us now, is now becoming a important member of the starting rotation. 27-11 record over those 2 years with a 3.95 ERA, so a very effective starter. Back to the postseason stats, he did not start a game last year, but he has pitched 12 1/3 innings, including a long relief appearance in relief of Ben Borgman, where he earned that victory. and he's yet to give up a run in the playoffs. So we certainly hope he pitches as well in his first official playoff start in this game as he did last year, when he was a really impressive rookie for us, and obviously was excellent in the playoffs. So a lot of pressure for the youngster on the road in Toronto in a do-or-die game for the Kansas City Royals. And the Royals get the win, 10-6. So we are going back to Kansas City. Kyle Smith out of the bullpen got the W. Morales, their starter, was saddled with the loss. You can see a lot of offense from the Royals. Homers from Angelo Bolden, Jorge Lebron, Jonathan Ojeda, and Bobby Cintrone. Taking a look at the box score, Estrada has now definitely given up some runs in the playoffs with 5 earned over 3 innings pitched. But nice relief from Kyle Smith, Jesus Mercado, and Santiago Suarez redeems himself from the day before. Morales, we banged around and then also scored some runs off of Medina and Phillips in their bullpen. Bobby Cintrone, the player of the game, 1 for 4, but 2 runs scored, 3 runs driven in, including that home run. So we are headed back to Kansas City for a deciding Game 5. And it's going to be the Game 1 starters who had that incredible 1-0 pitchers duel. Bryce Hillman and Ozzie Romero back on the mound in Kansas City for Game 5. Royals still again with their backs against the wall. 1 win away from moving on to the ALCS, but 1 loss away from the dream of 4 championships in a row ending. I think this is just a scouting report. Yep. So, they moved Rojas up on short rest. Their ace, Rojas, is going to be pitching in Game 5. So a potentially bold move, but you'll remember Rojas won Game 2 for them. We've got Bryce Hillman, who was the winner in Game 1 on the mound for us. Both pitchers were excellent, with Hillman getting the win in a 1-0 victory, Rojas coming back and getting the W in a 2-1 victory for the Blue Jays. The hope for the Royals is that the extra day of rest makes a difference, and Hillman is able to outduel Rojas. And the season, and possibly the playthrough, is over. The Royals will not get a four-peat. They will not even get back to the ALCS as another pitcher's duel, 3-2 game. The Blue Jays and their strong pitching staff overcame their weak offense to end the season for the Royals. You can see we did get a homer from Urquiza. Neither of the starters was involved in the decision. Santiago Suarez, our closer, with a second loss of the series. So see how ugly this was. Gave up a run in the top of the 9th, it looks like, to earn the loss. Hillman was respectable with 2 earned runs over 5 2/3. Rojas was even better with 5 hits, 2 walks, 8 strikeouts over 7 innings. We got to Cisneros for a run in the 8th, which is when we finally got the run off of Rojas also. But they came back in the top of the 9th. Sacrifice fly from Villalpando against Suarez. And Santiago Suarez with a 8.10 ERA over the course of the playoffs this year. Looks like he is the GOAT, but that will happen at times to relievers, even the great one. The greatest of all time, Mariano Rivera, had a few key losses in the playoffs, if I want to think back to I don't know if they were actually all losses on his record, but if I think back to 1997 and 2001 and 2004, there were games when even the Sandman was scored on in a clutch situation. So Santiago Suarez, I guess, in good company with a loss in the deciding game of the American League Division Series. So the season is over for the Kansas City Royals. We are going to sim through the rest of the playoffs, see what happens. As we're doing that, we'll take a look at some of the top performers from the Royals this season and sim through the rest of the year. And then at the end of the season, we will have a decision to make as to whether we're going to come back and continue playing with these Royals next year or to move on and do something else. And taking a look at the playoff tree, the Red Sox with the home field advantage took out the Mariners. They'll be facing the Blue Jays. Diamondbacks with the home field advantage took out the Padres. But the Reds upset the Mets. So the Reds, Diamondbacks, Blue Jays, and Red Sox are your final four here in the 2037 Major League Baseball season. As we talked about, the Royals had the best pitching staff in the American League this year. If preventing runs from scoring is what you want your pitching staff to do, and I think that it is. As we talked about through the series with Toronto, Chivera, Estrada, Hillman, and Lagerwell all had really nice years. We look at the WAR, and Chivera, Hillman, and Lagerwell were the top three pitchers on our team. Estrada not too far back with a 2.2 WAR on the season. Santiago Suarez, the playoff GOAT, had a really nice year for us. 5-5 record, 41 saves, 2.58 ERA with 97 strikeouts over 69 and 2/3 innings. Put up a 2.6 WAR in less than 70 innings with a 1.81 SIERA. So he did a great job for us, although he did get saddled with those two losses in the playoffs. Yisriel Burnett came over in the trade right before the trade deadline. 3.60 ERA over 25 innings for us. Talked about Estrada already. Kyle Smith, the guy that we picked up in the trade for Mike McNeil almost a year ago. Really nice first season with us. Just turned 25 recently. 8-1 record, 2 saves, 2.05 ERA, and 84 strikeouts over 74 and 2/3 innings pitched. Think he's going to be a very important bullpen piece for the Royals going forward. The lefty Gabe Pryor pitched as many games as anyone in the American League and put up a brilliant 2.19 ERA over 86 and 1/3 innings pitched. Very effective guy. Jesus Mercado, 6-5 record, 3.27 ERA. Nice year from him also. Omar Ganoa, who we picked up in the Dan Keogh trade, as we talked about, was used as a lefty specialist, only pitched 35 innings, gave up a 4.11 ERA. In contrast to Keogh, though, he gave up just one home run in those 35 innings pitched. I have not checked in to see how the year went for Dan Keogh. So it'll be interesting to see what he did with the Rays this year. He was better than he was with us in Tampa. 6-9 record, 4.20 ERA. Continues to strike out batters at a great rate with 178 strikeouts over 137 innings. And he did allow, I guess, only in quotation marks, 26 home runs over 137 innings, but that was a big improvement over what he did with us. 4 fewer home runs in almost 40 additional innings pitched. His SIERA, very strong once again, and put up a positive WAR this year. So looks like the Tampa Bay coaching staff was able to get a little more out of him than I was ever able to. Final two relievers to mention, Min-Ho Choi, right-hander who came over from Korea a few years ago. 4-0 record, 3.07 ERA with 55 strikeouts in 44 innings. And then the youngster Alex Simmons, who should be a big part of our bullpen going forward. 2.44 ERA with 69 strikeouts over 48 innings pitched. So he's got some nasty stuff and off to a good start in his major league career this year. So the pitching staff was solid, without a doubt. Turning to the position players of our offense, which scored the second most runs in the American League, Alex Vasquez just missed out on a triple crown, 327 batting average. 328 led the league. He ended up finishing third in the league, even though he was only a point behind the two people who were ahead of him, but led the league in home runs and runs batted in, slugging percentage, OPS plus, an otherworldly 195 WRC plus, put up a 7.6 WAR. I would think he's going to be in a battle with Manny Vela, the brilliant shortstop from the Red Sox, for American League MVP, given how good Vela is defensively, and the fact that he did put up a crazy WAR number this year. I would think that Vela's probably going to get the MVP award. Yeah, you can see, wow, I didn't know it was that good, but Vela with a WAR of almost 12 for the season. He's Ozzie Smith defensively, and he's dare I say Derek Jeter offensively, but he's got more power than Jeter. He's got more power than Jeter, and he hits for a higher batting average than Cal Ripken Jr. I guess A-Rod used to be a shortstop before he came to the Yankees. So is he A-Rod? He's not quite an A-Rod bat, but anyways, he is a brilliant offensive player, a brilliant defensive player, a great personality, and as you can see, a otherworldly 11.9 WAR this year, 311 batting average, 36 homers, 113 runs driven in. He's only won one MVP. He's also only 27 years old, but I think it's going to be tough for Vasquez to win the MVP award despite almost winning a triple crown, which is kind of crazy. Second on the team in WAR, Jorge Lebron, the youngster, his first full season in the majors, 328 batting average, so he was one of the two players who was ahead of Vasquez in the batting race. 16 homers, 66 runs driven in, 26 doubles, scored 86 runs, put up a 5.1 WAR for us. Would think that he would be a very strong candidate for Rookie of the Year, although did he have enough? I think... no, he may not be eligible. I think he's got 157 at-bats over a couple of seasons. I don't remember the exact rules, but he may not actually be eligible. We'll find out. Angelo Velasquez, our center fielder, really nice season offensively, hit 308. He's also a very good defensive center fielder. That allowed him to put up a 4.6 WAR. Jonathan Ojeda, I guess in the context of Jonathan Ojeda, who you may remember we picked in the first round at the end of the first round in 2034, and he was up in the majors at the beginning of the next season. I guess a 265 batting average, 39 homers, and 102 runs driven in is kind of a down year for him, amazingly. After leading the league in home runs as a rookie, leading the league in runs scored in his second year. He didn't lead the league in anything this year, but still a very important offensive player for us. Victor Avelar, who I've talked about, is a potential guy that we may look to trade away, and he was the Rookie of the Year just 4 seasons ago. Nice year, 256 batting average, 30 homers, 81 runs driven in. But we are going to have to find a way to keep Bobby Cintrone on the roster next season. So he's someone who we could potentially be moving on from. I guess a little bit of a disappointing year from Javi Medina. 264 batting average, 25 homers, 97 runs driven in. Did hit 38 doubles, 120 OPS plus, 114 WRC plus, but you can see just a 1.8 WAR. So definitely down from what he had done his first 2 years with our team. Angelo Bolden, the catcher, 241 average, bit below average defensively, but a good, solid defensive catcher. Still put up a 1.5 WAR for us this year. Adam Fuchs, his backup, also put up a 1.5 WAR, hit 267 with 19 doubles and 176 at-bats. He's also a very good defensive catcher. Willie Flores banged up a decent amount this year. 242 average, did have 11 homers and 46 ribbies. He is fragile at this point. Love the defensive versatility, but him, if I could speak, Rich Alvarado and the injured Aragetto Laziosi are all heading into their final years of arbitration eligibility next season. So some big decisions to be made by Kansas City as to who will be with us for the long term among those. Their other classmate, who's now been up in the majors 5 full seasons, Tony Fonseca, hit just 248 this year, but he's really not in for his bat. If it wasn't for Manny Vela, he probably would be winning some Gold Glove awards. And he also is signed to us for a longish term extension at this point. So while we may eventually potentially be moving on from Flores or Alvarado or Laziosi in the not-so-distant future, Fonseca likely to be an important member of the Royals going forward. Similarly, Dave Urquiza, who is the guy we traded for to give us some insurance against Flores and Laziosi injuries, and you can see he started basically half the games this year because of injuries to those players. 269 average, 10 homers, and 350 at-bats. Pretty close to a league average offensive player, still put up half a run of WAR. Liked having him come off the bench. Bobby Cintrone made his major league debut. 264 average with 3 homers in his first 87 major league at-bats. Like the bat, love the defensive versatility. He will definitely be big up with the big club next year. Rich Alvarado, not a lot of usage for him this year with the fact that we did make that trade to bring on Urquiza, and at the end of the year had Cintrone. Hit 256, but just 86 at-bats for the utility infielder. And Billy Dominguez, another guy that was up and down between Omaha and Kansas City. Didn't get too much action either with Urquiza around. Hit 277 and 47 at-bats. Just checking in on the injured list, Laziosi had a nice year. 290 average, 36 doubles. Put up a 3.7 WAR for us, which was one of the best numbers on the team, but did lose him to that torn hamstring at the beginning of September and never were able to get him back for the playoffs, given that we were bounced in the first round. We'll check in on the other guys. Juan Munoz was our Rule 5 draft acquisition who got hurt out for the year in spring training. So the good news is that we've kept him for the whole year now, so we can put him in the minors next year and give him some of the seasoning that he probably needs. Certainly looks like someone who could be a contributor out of the bullpen as a left-handed arm down the line. Kumar Rocker, picked up in a trade last offseason, was solid for a 7-3 record with a 4.01 ERA, 98 strikeouts in 92 innings. But then we lost him to that torn rotator cuff in mid-June, and his year was over. He'll be 38 in about a month and a half. See what the future holds for him. And also see what the future holds for Ben Borgman. Lost him right about the same time that we lost Kumar Rocker. He was 3-2 this year, but with a 6.19 ERA. His contract is up. He's coming off of a major injury. Unlikely that we will be bringing him back to the Royals if I'm still in charge of the Royals next year. Obviously, we've got to figure that out also. But that's a look at the top performers from the Royals here in this 2037 season. And the 2037 World Series will feature the Boston Red Sox, who swept the Toronto Blue Jays out of the playoffs, and the plucky Cincinnati Reds, who picked off the Braves, picked off the Mets, and then just won a 7-game series against the Diamondbacks. So the Reds have beaten both of the National League teams that had home field advantage in first-round buys, and they'll get their chance at doing the same to the Red Sox in the World Series. And the Boston Red Sox are your 2037 World Series championships. Dominant performance, reminiscent of what the Royals have done in the playoffs some of the last few seasons. 3-1 win over the Mariners, a sweep of the Blue Jays, and then a 4-1 win over the Reds. So the Red Sox dropping just 2 games on the way to their World Series championship. And as the offseason begins, some big decisions for the Royals. Option year decision needed on Caleb Lagerwell, set to make $21 million next year. Longtime Royal, who'll be turning 36 next season, coming off a really nice year. Still an important member of the starting rotation for these Royals. Is he worth $21 million, though, is the big question. Taken aback at the review of our season goals. Ownership wanted us to win it all. A little disappointed that we didn't. Improved our defensive efficiency. Improved our prospects a little bit. Not pleased with what we've done with the farm system. And hoping we can bring home another World Series trophy in the near future. Very happy with our performance. Want us to win a championship. Find a top 20 prospect. Build a top 6 minor league system. And build a dynasty over the next 4 seasons. So the work never finishes. Looking at the budget, $268 million. And is that up a little bit? That's actually down a little bit. That's down $10 million. So obviously we didn't go on the long playoff run that we've gone on over the last few years. And meant that we still made... this is 2038. So we lost a little bit of money last year. We had gotten used to the big playoff revenue, which you can see dipped from close to $24 million in 2036 to a little over $8 million this past season, since we were only involved in one round of the playoffs. So going to have some choices to make. I want to go back and look at the budget. Not a ton of money for extensions right now, but obviously, a lot of that is driven by the Caleb Lagerwell situation. Obviously, if we move on from him, that'll open up a lot of money for the team. You can see Flores, Laziosi, Avear, Bernay, even to an extent Rich Alvarado and Minho Choi. We got some players in arbitration who are going to be making some pretty big money this year, and Javi Medina too. So a lot of players due for some big raises. As we've talked about, Ave are starting to make pretty decent money. He may be a guy to move on from, save $8.5 million off the payroll, open up a spot for Bobby Cintrone, and probably pick up something pretty decent in return. So those are some of the decisions going to have to think about if we remain general manager of the Kansas City Royals. Also have some holes to fill in our farm system. Top prospects, not surprisingly, no Royals on the list. And the off season is underway. So taking a look at what we've done with the Royals, 16 seasons, 12 playoff appearances in the 5 championships, including the streak of 3 in a row that just ended. So it's been a successful playthrough with the Royals at this point. We are going to decide whether we come back and run it back with the Royals or move on to something else. But you're going to have to wait until our next episode to find out what the answer is. We've got some ideas. We haven't made a final decision. We're going to sleep on it, and we'll let you know in our next episode whether we're going to continue moving forward with the Royals or finally move on and do something else. And if we move on and do something else, will it be starting an entirely new simulation, starting an entirely new baseball universe, going back and doing something historic, or just moving on to another team in this universe that we've gotten used to over these past 16 seasons? A lot of different options if we move on from the Royals, and we'll let you know what we decide to do in our next episode. Thanks so much for watching, and hope you have a great day.